The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents A Better Life with Chris Johnson. So, Chris, so good to have you back in Austin. You've been kind of on a world tour. A Better Life, the book, came out, and as we can see, and then you did a film based on the interviews. I'll get to that. I want to find out how people can get involved, how they can see the film, etc. But I think it'd probably be good to get some background on you. I mean, you didn't have a particular religious training or upbringing as a child, did you?
No, I didn't. My dad is a liberal Christian, but we were raised kind of without a religion.
So were there like ever dinner table conversations about what other people believed or what he believed, or, you know, or was this just not an issue for you and your entire family?
We didn't really talk about it that much. I do remember when I was about 5 or so, I got a children's Bible, you know, one of those Bibles with all the illustrations for kids. And I remember asking my dad where the dinosaurs fit into that. And he said, I believe he said it was just, you know, kind of a mythology, kind of a story, just like the Greek myths were.
That's like an extremely liberal Christian view, to kind of play it up as myths. So how then did you get involved with the atheist community or studying religion or caring about this? Because it would seem to me that if, you know, as somebody who grew up a Southern Baptist, the people who grew up without a religion where it wasn't a big deal, I'm always kind of curious, how did you get interested in this to begin with?
I think because I didn't have a religion, I found it more interesting that other people did. Because I didn't have that, the idea that other people believed other things that seemed to me to be very out there interested me. And I thought, well, how do they believe this? Why did they believe this? How did they start believing this? And so studying the history of religions, I ended up minoring in religious studies in college just because I found it interesting. I'm interested in the history of religion, how it evolves over time, and the different things that people believe.
So I remember in around 2011 or so, you were at a taping of the Atheist Experience. You'd kind of found your way into this. And you actually reminded me that you mentioned, hey, I've got this idea for a book. And I said, well, I don't know if anybody's ever done that. The background of the book, it's called A Better Life, and it's 100 atheists talking about joy and meaning in a life without God or without belief in a God. Why did you pick that particular topic as opposed to, you know, the various arguments for the existence of God, or, you know, picking out somebody's life story to do?
I wanted to add something new to the conversation and in a way change the conversation. I think much of it at that time especially was all about what we don't believe in, which is an important conversation to have. I don't want to diminish the importance of that. The work of Dawkins and Dennett and Hitchens and all that, to talk about what we don't believe in, to, you know, really combat those religious ideologies is important. But I also felt something was missing, which was talking about what we do believe in. So when there is no God, now what? Which is kind of a tagline that I use for the book and for the film, which is this idea that I don't even talk about why there's no God. That's not really important to me at this point. What's important to me is, okay, I don't believe in a God. Many people don't believe in a God now. What does that mean for our lives? How does that impact us? How does that affect how we see life and death and our relationships and things like that? Those are the things that are really important to me.
So this whole issue of meaning and joy and value and purpose in life, it comes up over and over again. I've addressed it. I'll probably be doing an actual video covering life has no value, because we hear it so often. And even shortly after you started working on the book, there was an episode of Oprah where she came out and she said something like she felt sorry for atheists because they couldn't experience awe and wonder. And all these things kind of tie together. As you ran around interviewing people, did you find any answers that, you know, that maybe surprised you or, you know, gave you some new insight on your own answer to that question?
One of the things that surprised me was Julie Sweeney talking about really taking a moment to relish the happiest moments in your life. Looking back and saying, well, what really made me happy? Not really general things like I graduated from college, but specific moments in your life that you can look back and say, that moment in particular when I was really, really happy. And I've taken that to heart. I try to not only remember those moments, but in the moment, I try to think, okay, this is a really great moment. I am very happy right now. Which I'm sure you're saying to yourself right now, right? This is a very happy moment.
We had a great time. We went out to Bikini Falls today. The floodwaters in Texas have got the rivers overflowing a little bit. And so you got to see it in a state that I've never seen it before. We shot some video out there and had technical issues. And all of that together makes for kind of a fun day, you know? And why wouldn't you cherish those things and remember them?
Right.
Why does it have to be more than this in the minds of some people?
Right, right. I think that, you know, taking those moments and really concentrating on them and relishing that, because as Julia says in the film, that's all you have. At the end of the day, all you have are these moments. And so if you can really enjoy them and remember them and savor those moments, I think that makes life more enjoyable.
So you ran around all over the world and got to meet some incredible people. I'm jealous that I didn't have the idea to do this as well. So, you know, kudos. This all started as a Kickstarter project, and when you finished, you put the book together, and it's great. It's got amazing pictures, and it tells different people's stories and views on these things. But you also shot interview footage. Did you plan from the beginning to, you know, maybe I can do something with this, or I'm definitely going to do a film?
I had the idea in the back of my mind to do something with it because of my background in film production. I wanted to do something with that footage. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do though. So whether it was what kind of a film it was going to turn into be, I didn't really know at that point. But I had all this footage. I think over 70 hours of interview footage.
That just boggles my, I mean, I'm just fairly new into video editing and production stuff. How do you go through that and figure out which people, which clips are going to make it into this condensed version of the movie? What works and what doesn't?
It takes a really long time. I mean, it took about 9 months to go through and edit all the footage together, as well as shooting new footage during that period. So it just takes a lot of time, you know, figuring out, okay, who says what the best, because there was a lot of repetition.
Sure.
Because you talk to 100 people about these issues, talk to 100 atheists about these issues, you're going to get a lot of the same kind of stuff. So who says it best, who says things that are kind of unique as well, and just forming a thread and taking people along on that journey, that's kind of where my motivation was when I was putting the film together.
And talking about like the technical issues that we had today, and I've had, you know, because of the way I do my videos, I'm going to prop up a camera, I'm going to talk for 3, 4, 5 minutes and piece together things. And invariably there's something that I said that I actually liked, but it turned out to be shot horribly or the audio is wrong. Were there things that you perhaps wanted to include in there, but it maybe, you know, the audio wasn't right or the filming wasn't right, that it was like, oh, I really wish I could have included this because it's so good, but, you know, we had a technical glitch?
Sure, I think that happens with every film ever made. Probably has footage that they really wanted to put in, but for some reason, one reason or another, it just didn't make it into
This was your
effect.
best take, but there's a microphone stand right in the middle
Right.
of it. If only you could act that good all
I
the
know.
time.
It happens though. But I'm really happy with how the film did turn out.
Mm-hmm.
There is tons of footage. I mean, really good footage too, that just for some reason couldn't make it in. You know, time issue. You can't have a 14-hour film.
Sure.
I'm sure some people would want to watch it, but most people would not want to sit through something like that. So there's a lot of footage that's great that just didn't make it in. Hopefully I can do something with that at some point, whether it's a web series of some kind, something like that, because there's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of maybe condensed interviews with the various people. These didn't make it into the project, not because there's anything wrong with what they said, but you know, you had to make decisions, and that's difficult. So you're now on the tour with the movie. What kind of reception has it been getting from atheists and also from theists?
That's an interesting question. The reception has been very good so far. A lot of it is culturally dependent. So people in the US, for example, I think understand the film a bit more than people say in the UK. Because in the UK, I think people don't care as much about what religion you are, whether you're an atheist. Mm-hmm. Here in the US, people really care. And it's one of those things that I think they really enjoyed the bits where people were talking, you know, nasty things about atheists. But over here, like, that's not the interesting part, because we all know that. The interesting part is the, you know, sections where people are talking about what gives them joy and meaning without God. In the UK, I think it's a bit different.
There's a lot of kind of regional things like that. I know you mentioned that you were in Peru doing a screening there, and sold out crowd and people.
Yeah, standing room only there. People had traveled 8 hours on a bus
Wow.
to come and see the film, which when you work so hard about, in terms of making something, putting your work out there, to have people travel so far to see it, it really makes you feel like you've done something worthwhile.
But there was an interesting story you told me that I kind of want to hit really quickly because I think it gets to other points later, and that's that there was one person who had come up and said, basically, I don't understand. I didn't get anything out of this. I didn't learn anything I didn't know. I don't know why these people are having problems. Just go get a friend. Yeah. And, people, there's a lot of conversations about atheists, atheist culture. We're human beings. We like to socialize. And so they would talk about Sunday assembly and things that get labeled as atheist church. And my view has always been, well, if it's right for you, it's right for you. If it's not right for you, it's not right for you. I don't see the problem. But there are others who are like, oh, no, that's too much like religion. So you've got, like any other group of people, I suppose, we're different. But there's a perception that we're somehow emotionless, lacking empathy, that we don't, that we're robots thinking, oh, the ontological argument, this has been presented and therefore I don't believe in a God because, When I hear a story about someone who says, I didn't get this, why don't they just go get a friend? I'm wondering if that was kind of how frequently those sorts of objections come up compared to the reactions from other people.
Well, that's only happened once, so I'm glad it's only happened once. And I was really surprised by that. Someone who came out in the middle of the film, didn't even watch the entire film, came out in the middle and said, I don't get it. And specifically pointed to Cara Santa Maria in the film and said, here's this Mormon girl, and she has a lot of angst about the fact that she doesn't believe anymore, and why doesn't she just go out and get some friends? I mean, it's not hard. And I'm thinking, okay, like lack of empathy here. Someone who just doesn't understand that, we're talking about a 14-year-old girl here who is losing her Mormon faith, and the Mormon community is all she knows
right.
at that time. So it was a weird experience to have somebody say that to me, because I thought, wow, you're lacking in compassion towards your fellow humans.
It may also be a kind of a lacking of understanding the background that they come from. My wife has talked about the fact that if you live in certain regions in the United States in the Bible Belt, if you have a hobby like knitting or jewelry making, whatever, and you want to get together with people who share that, what you may find is that they're going to be starting with a prayer. They're going to be talking about what happened at church, that the social aspect of something that's completely unrelated to religion is still infused with religion in some places. And if you come from a background that you don't have any experience with that, you're like, hey, I just go hang out with the guys here, and when we go play pool, we just go play pool. Well, I've played pool a lot, and I've also had conversations about religion and what goes on at church while doing that. It just depends on kind of where you are. And it bothers me that some people don't see this, but I think what bothers me more is that when you try to show this to some people, there's a handful who would just throw up their hands. I'll just get a friend. And I don't know how to actually address that. But I think that films like this are doing a good job. And the reason I kind of wanted to get to this is there's this idea that the reason that meaning and joy and purpose comes up so often, I think, is because it's a legitimate fear, or at least a fear that has been ingrained and reinforced by certain religious teachings. If religions exploit your fear about death and dying, your fear about being alone, your fear of not being loved, the idea that your life could be ultimately meaningless and purposeless, and then in the end it's all over and everything you did here didn't matter, is a fear that people have. And so talking about this, while I don't, the purpose of the film isn't to convert people to atheism, maybe show them a better light about who we are, I think it's doing a good job of perhaps alleviating some of that fear, to show some believers that this thing that they've been afraid of, maybe there's not a good reason to be afraid of this.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. I think And you're right, that is one of the reasons I made the film, was because there are these stereotypes and these ideas, not only about atheists themselves as people, but the idea and consequences of atheism, right? So people think not only are atheists bad people, right, but atheism itself is nihilism. That atheism itself is a way, towards just not caring about anything or anyone. Like, why should you care about other people if there's no God? Which doesn't. What? Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it's because we have to share a planet with them, and what I do. In fact, so to me, a lot of it seems kind of obvious, but it's because it's only obvious now because I spent years and years working my way out of my religious beliefs. Now, you'd mentioned that you hadn't had much feedback from theists, but some of them had come to see the film and at least were thankful. I'm wondering, I really wish there were more conversations with theists and religionists, or people of religion who went to see the film, to find out what did they get out of this. Did this perhaps alleviate a fear? Did this give them some new insight into atheists as people? Have we done something towards achieving like atheist normalcy? And if you're not getting that feedback, maybe we need to get some ministers involved in a screening and have a panel discussion of what they got out of it.
Yeah.
Even if all they do is preach.
That would be great. Some of my religious friends who've seen the film have said one thing that they appreciate about it is the fact that it doesn't just say things like, oh, religious people are stupid, or things like that. And they appreciate the fact that the film tries to go to understand why people gravitate towards religion in the first place. You and I have talked before about how nobody's a Christian because of the Kalam cosmological argument.
Right.
Nobody sees these arguments and thinks, well, there must be a God now.
There you go.
A lot of it is emotional. It is not really a tangible thing for people. They can't really explain it very well sometimes. Or it's just a community thing. And so one of the things that I tried to do was show that even as an atheist, even as someone who doesn't go to church, I understand why people do. I understand that desire for connection. I understand that desire to explain a chaotic universe. Good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. Your best friend will get cancer and some jerk will win the lottery, right? That happens. And the world is a confusing place, and people want to impose some kind of order, some kind of reason, some karma, right? And I think that's all wrong, but I understand it. I understand that desire. And I think that even many atheists, when confronted with something, try to think of things in terms of kind of a cosmic justice sometimes. I think that's a very natural way to think about it.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to kind of step away from that and think, okay, this isn't really a logical way of thinking about it. How are things really coming along here?
We've got this kind of ingrained sense of fairness, and when something isn't fair and another person's involved, we have a real objection. And when something doesn't seem fair and it's just the universe involved, you actually mentioned something earlier, a question that you like to ask about what would the world look like, to people who believe in God. What would the world look like if there wasn't a God? What would be different about it? What would we expect to be different? Because if the world we live in fact, isn't governed by a God, we would expect, somebody good's going to have something bad happen to him, and somebody bad's going to have something good to him. And so if we, in fact, live in a world with a God and it's the same, what does that say?
Right. I think for me, that's one of the reasons why I'm not drawn towards theism. Because when I look at the world, it looks exactly like I would expect it to look if there was no God or spirit or any kind of...
Or karma or anything.
Yeah, exactly. It looks exactly like I would expect it to look without a God.
So what's next for you? Now, you're going to be continuing on the tour, and we'll include links to the websites where people can go to find out about the book, be able to order it, find out they can watch the film online.
Yeah.
But there's also a list of screenings in different places at the website too. And the website is what?
Theatheistbook.com.
What are you doing once the movie tour is over? What is your next solution to all of the problems in the world?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know. But whatever I do, I want it to be as special as this project was. Doing the book and doing the film was an incredible experience. meeting all these people, having these conversations, creating something that people found important. Hopefully I can do something else that has that level of impact. Whatever it is, however I can use my talents, whatever I can contribute, my contribution to this community, to make the world a better place, hopefully. But we'll see what that is. I have no idea.
I decided that we go ahead and kind of do this interview as part of the Atheist Debates Project, even though it has nothing to do with debates, in part because I value what you've done. I'm concerned about the perception of us as, robotic, soulless, emotionless. I will continue to have all kinds of arguments about the existence of God and morality and the merits of certain things. But I also have the goal of getting people to recognize, even if I don't change somebody's mind about religion, getting them to realize, first of all, I'm an atheist and I'm a human being and I have these interests and I'm a person and I'm a decent person and we share a lot of the same goals and values, maybe not all of them. We should be able to have discussions about those. But I don't sit around bemoaning the loss of an afterlife or feeling sad that there's not some supernatural being who's governing and cares about all the little things in my life. That's just not it. But there's an extra dimension to this that I think is touched on in the film as well that I'd love to hear from believers when they watch this, because I think it gets them to recognize who we are, so that it's a lot more difficult to just write off atheists as, monstrous, baby-eating, destroy the world, argue at all costs, down with religion people, and that we're all together here as human beings.
One of the things I wanted to do in the film was show that we are a wide variety of opinions, right? There's no, as I say in the film, there's no pope of atheism calling the shots. There are different labels that people like to use about the way they believe, different ideas, different political persuasions even. And so there's constantly different conversations going on. And like we've talked about in the past, different approaches work well. We don't need one approach. I think many approaches work the best because some will work with some people and some will work with others. And
somebody's going to debate, somebody's going to be a firebrand, somebody's going to be a diplomat, and somebody is going to do what you're doing, which is showing the world that we're human beings with thoughts and emotions, and that we're not all depressed about this God thing, and that many of us have actually spent a lot of time thinking about this. This wasn't, we didn't just like fall in love with something that religion's called sinful and say, no, I don't want a God. It was, a legitimate, intellectual, emotional, human pursuit.
Right.
Where the claims of gods came up short.
Yeah, and one thing I like to think about too with this is that the title, both of the book and of the film, A Better Life, I really do think that's true. And some people say, ooh, are you saying that you're better than religious people? No, but I am saying that I do think that once you strip away God and the supernatural, I think that path can lead towards a better life, because it really makes you appreciate that this is all you have. When there is no afterlife, when there is no God, no deity pulling the strings, it's up to us. It's up to us to fix homelessness, disease, poverty, everything, right? It's all up to us. And that can be daunting, but I think it can also be very empowering, because then, okay, let's take it on. Let's make the world better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
This video is made possible by supporters of the Atheist Debates Patreon project. You can find more information and add your support at patreon.com/atheistdebates.